Good morning, everyone. Oh my gosh, good afternoon. I keep thinking it's morning time. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 35th Annual Small Farm Conference. If you're here for Community Grazing Cooperatives, then you're in the right place. If not, please stay with us. This is also going to be a really fun workshop. And as you can see, we have a wonderful panel here, very diverse. And so, yeah, please stay here with us. My name is Beatriz, and I work with the Community Alliance of Family Farmers. And I want to just set some ground rules right before we get started, and I hand this off to our panelists. Please use the chat to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're tuning in from. How's the weather out there? And use the Q&A function to put all your questions there for our panelists. It's also very easy for them to keep track of them there, and they can also answer them live. So please use that function whenever possible to put those questions there so they don't get lost. Additionally, this workshop is being recorded and hopefully will be uploaded onto our YouTube at the end of the conference. And yeah, we're very excited to have this panel here. Thank you so much to this panel and our sponsors for making this conference happen. And with that, I'll let you all take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone who's here to listen to our conversation and to hear a little bit more about Community Grazing Cooperatives. My name is Sarah Kaiser. I have my own business called Wild Oat Hollow, and a big piece of that is helping people on lots of different scales develop a community grazing cooperative or a shared land stewardship concept. Predominantly, what is a community grazing cooperative? It's both agriculture, it's community oriented, it's a shared experience of tending the land. And it has spawned out of the need for more ruminants on the land for ecological regeneration, but also more ruminants on the ground for fire fuel reduction for vegetation maintenance. So after the fires of 2017, it became more and more common for people to really be concerned about vegetation management. And also we became really aware that no matter how we tend our own land, it doesn't matter if the neighbors around us or the communities around us are untended. We aren't safe, the landscape isn't safe, the landscape isn't healthy. We don't have a healthy ecosystem. So how do we come together, unite as a community, and share animals that move across the property and just rediscover what it's like to tend the land in community and across property lines? So we're not just looking at individual property lines and how we steward and how we work together on this landscape. And it also allows communities to create their own little agricultural food system as well. They can have food hubs where they each get a lamb in the freezer. They come together and have a potluck at the end. They share the apple trees that come from their apple trees and the broccoli that's grown at somebody else's place. So we see these communities become little agricultural hubs as well as vegetation management, and people that just come together and learn to take care of each other again, like we always have. So thanks for being here, and feel free to ask a lot of questions. We have a lot of different people here that have different experiences, so there should be some good conversations. And we love interaction, so ask away. So I'm going to ask each panelist, and I'll prompt you to please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your grazing cooperative or your grazing program. Okay, how about Andrew? You can go first.
Okay, so Andrew Saul, and I live in West Sebastopol. We're up on the rim of the Ebabayas watershed and creek, and we're one of several properties that are adjacent to a cattle ranch. And so as we were looking to how to deal with a hillside that it's really gotten out of control, the cattle rancher, Sharon Harston, has really stepped forward to say, hey, let's work a partnership here. So our arrangement's going to be Sharon and Ron's cattle, and on the land of currently it's 3 adjacent properties, but we hope to extend it because there are several other people that are interested. And so we're setting this up with Sarah's coaching and William's help with infrastructure. We'll hear about that from him later, so that we're actually this spring starting to clear for putting in fencing and then infrastructure in terms of water, and then we move cattle in. So we're excited to get rolling.
Great, thank you. And I like what you said, that it takes a village to get the community grazing cooperative started. So it's never one person, there's a whole lot of people coming together, which is another great thing. Just because he was talking about you, William, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Andrew, for that. Welcome all and greetings. So my name is William Hart. I'm a project manager with the Gold Ridge Resource Conservation District located in Sonoma County. And I'm here to talk to you about our Land Smart Grazing program. I'm going to put a link to our website in the chat. And this is this program is in partnership with Sonoma RCD. So we are covering the entire county. It's under our Land Smart umbrella, which is a regional planning program for a number of counties throughout the North Bay. We are in our second phase of the Land Smart Grazing program. And I guess I'll leave it there. We've had our funding is coming through the Sonoma County Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District. These are PG&E settlement funds that have been directed to the vegetation management program that the Open Space District is running. So maybe I'll just give you in a nutshell. Our program has three components. So we are running a reimbursement program. Landowners or cooperatives can apply to our program for funding. We will reimburse the cost of that project. We'll cover 85% of the cost up to $20,000 is our cap. And then we're also supporting grazers. We're doing outreach to build up the network of grazers within the county. We're offering them financial support through a mini grant program, non-competitive mini grant. $1,000 is the cap on that to give them the materials that they need to support grazing. And then there's an educational component, education for landowners, education for grazers. And that's what we're doing. Thank you, Sarah.
Great. Yeah, thank you for being here. And thank you to being so creative in your funding and the way you're funding all the pieces of the system. That's another key piece. Okay, Sarah, introduce yourself and your cooperative.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Tuckman, and our cooperative's name is called Herding Hope. We are in Sonoma County as well, and we started after this whole neighborhood was burned in the Tubbs fire in 2017. So most all my neighbors and myself, we lost our homes then. And when we came back to rebuild, it felt like we needed to do something in order to mitigate that kind of disaster again. And it felt as though having animals on the land was great for a number of reasons, mainly for vegetation and fire fuel reduction. But also, actually, probably as importantly, they can bring a real calm and bring people together in a way that seems really important. So we connected with Sarah Kaiser, and we now, I guess we're in our second year. We have four or five families that have been really involved, and we have about 15 animals. We've bred some of them ourselves. So it's actually going really well, and we've learned a ton. So I also have 3 kids, and lots going on, just like all of you. But thanks for coming. I'm really excited to talk more about this. So
thank you, Sarah. Okay, Carson, you're up.
Hi, my name's Carson Caveney. We have 4 families kind of near the Santa Rosa Plains area, kind of near Taylor Mountain. And we run a lot of sheep, few goats, and we're just trying to mitigate fuels and increase biodiversity maybe of native flora, and trying to just manage the land properly, and using animals to do that, I think, is a really good tool. And yeah, I'm just here today to answer any questions and talk about my experience.
Thank you, Carson. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the introduction. Okay, now we start coming into some of the questions that everybody here is prepared for. And again, as members, as they start to ask these questions, feel free to drop additional questions into Q&A because we're happy to be flexible and evolve as this goes on. So the next question is, what led you to build or become part? What was the first reason that led you to build or become part of the collaborative land stewardship project or your community grazing cooperative? And then what were your original goals in developing this to begin with? I'm gonna go ahead and give that to you, Sarah, because I know you guys had some pretty big goals.
Yeah, well, we touched on it again. I just touched on it in the introduction, but so this community has been actually our whole county, and I know a lot of California, we're all pretty traumatized by fire, but especially those of us who lost everything. So I think we really needed something to just calm us down. And amazingly, the animals did that. Mainly though, also it was fire fuel reduction. We have a lot of riparian corridors here, heavy, oak and poison oak, blackberry. So we were excited about the possibility of using goats and in conjunction with sheep to work both the pasture areas and then the riparian areas in the summertime. I think that was our main goal. Our other main goal was bringing community together. It seemed really important, again, post-fire, if we're going to come back and put in the resources to live in this area, we needed to come together as a community. So the idea of collaborating around animals was really exciting. And then also, I didn't know anything about raising sheep and goats at that time. So doing it alone seemed really daunting. And I talked to Sarah about it, and I was like, well, I like to go on vacation sometimes, and she's like, well, that's the great thing about having other people in it with you, is you are sharing the responsibility. So it's not just all on you. So that was a really appealing reason to start it as a collaborative instead of by myself. Did I answer? Oh, wait, there was one more thing. I was also really interested in having milking animals and making cheese. So, and that's something I can talk more about that later, but we ended up getting into, and that was an exciting opportunity.
And you're very happy with your goat milk.
Very happy with the goat milk.
Everybody was very happy. Everybody thinks goat milk tastes bad. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Fresh goat milk.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, Andrew, I'm going to pass it to you. What led you to become a part of a collaborative, and what were your original goals?
Well, the original goals were really coming up with a solution for a lot of areas outside of defensible space, the wildlands, the glorious wildlands around us that we aren't managing. And so the fire risk is evident, and it terrifies all of us. We haven't gone through what the other Sarah has gone through, but it's in the air. We're certainly threatened by it. So I think that presence has been what has driven interest. Number of the homes are at the top of a hillside, and you can just see how the wind would come whipping up that hill and hit the mature coyote bush and the Scotch broom and just create a real inferno that might not stop. So that really was the motivation. The part of this that I love is the regenerative approach. I really got into this through Brock Dolman at OAC, who I had met, and he started educating me on how you could do this in a way that you actually can restore the watershed and the fire shed. You can create ways to have it hold water, so it'll spread and sink, and use the grazing animals to really promote that process. So that really jives in completely to what we're all interested in, especially if we can really retain water and enhance the health of the area. And fortunately, we're also sitting in an area, the Ababias is one that Goldbridge RCD, William and his compatriots have done. They've done a lot through Land Smart to already work on the area and try to help control some of it. So I think we really have a chance of extending that program and trying to create a really expanded sort of shaded fuel break that would really give us some substantial area to slow a firestorm as it comes through. So the bigger picture is really that.
Yeah.
perspective.
Thank you for commenting. Yeah, thank you for noting that. I imagine most of the people here have the same experience, and I'll hand it to Carson in just a moment. But a lot of what people come to grazing with is for vegetation management or for fire fuel load reduction. And what it evolves into as they get more in touch with it is the ecological regeneration and how their land changes and the flora changes, their connection to it changes, the water absorption changes. So grazing goes well beyond vegetation management. It's actually doing real regenerative work on the landscape, and it's connecting people to that land. And that's a big piece of the evolution. I think once you have animals on the land, you get to experience that.
Yeah, I would
Okay,
add
Kirsten, I'll hand that over to you. Oh,
I could add one other comment just to tie that in. As we were exploring options, we did go down the fire route to say, could we use good
yeah.
fire? And
Mhm.
and in fact, you came around for a couple of those
Yeah.
discussions, and that was interesting and attractive, except we're on a hillside with homes on top of it, and it was completely out of the question to do fire. There were some people that said, we're fighting. If you're doing fire,
Yeah.
and it just was clearly not going to pull the community together, but blow it apart. Whereas I think
Right.
grazing brings people together. So
Yeah.
it's a much different, this is a much easier sell, which is such a big part of this. How do we get people enthusiastic?
Yes.
And
Good.
if you have
Very good
fighting over
point.
fire, not going to happen.
Yeah. Good fire on the land, as we know, is a critical piece, but it is a much bigger leap for a lot of people to get to fire being on the land than grazing on the land.
And
So
depends
Carson,
on
I'm going to hand it to
where
you.
you're-
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, my goals are similar to Sarah's and Andrew's, and getting involved with the community and reducing fire fuels and all that, and increasing the land, biodiversity in the land. But also, I was really interested in the idea of having a low impact meat source and trying to stay away from the factory farming. And so that was a big push for me, was getting involved and trying to find my own source of food and trying to have that low impact as possible. So yeah, that was one of my big pushes, as well as the land management aspects.
Yeah. And you're learning a lot about that. You're seeing that trend into your community,
Mhm.
having that local food source, which is great.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The animals can do all of those. They can do so much. William, on to you. I mean, you're not starting your own grazing cooperative, but your Land Smart program. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll put another link in the chat. So this is a story map explaining our program. I think like Sarah Tuckman, the 2017 fires were a wake-up call. We can operate in a environment of fear and a poverty mindset and feeling isolated, or we can have a mindset of abundance and opportunity and connection with our community, right? So I think that was the motivation. At the RCD, we're involved in the community wildfire prevention program, those planning efforts that are happening throughout the county. We're involved in the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. And we just saw an opportunity with grazing. Our leadership, my executive director is Brittany Jensen. Her husband is a 5th generation sheep rancher in Tamales. So Brittany really brought the idea for this program to us. And we just ran with it. We're fortunate that we have this funding opportunity from Ag and Open Space District. We've had 2 phases of it now. We had our first phase was really a pilot program. We've learned how to run this, and we've expanded our vision to really, Sarah's vision of these cooperative efforts that's our vision as well, because fire doesn't care about parcel lines or fence lines. Our landscape evolved with grazers, so we need that livestock action on the landscape. So yeah, co-benefits.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. There's so many different reasons why people come to it, but the evolution covers a lot of different things. So I'm going to jump to the relationship piece, because that's why we call it community grazing cooperatives, because it goes beyond the grazing and the ecological to community oriented and relationships, us coming back together in relationship. So how did your relationship with your neighborhood, and William, of course, yours can be observational, or your relationship with your coworkers, however, I know you'll pull something up with this. How did your relationship with your neighborhood and the land you tend change after having the animals on the property? Once those animals landed, and I realize, Andrew, you're still in the development, the animals haven't gotten there, but you're in a stage where it's going to happen. So you've been building relationships for 2 years now, almost. And so what happened, what changed in your relationship, and what surprised you? What was the biggest surprise about that relationship change? If you want to say surprise.
Yeah.
You want to go first, Andrew? You look like you're ready to go.
Sure. Well, we have, small group at this point, but what I was pleasantly surprised with is to see that I had been pushing this and trying to get this moving. And then a couple of my neighbors ended up jumping in, reaching out to William, maybe through Sharon. I wasn't even sure exactly how that happened, but this was so attractive to them that they really jumped. And that, to me, because the hardest job, I've been trying to organize the community for several years, and it's hard to get people moving, get them willing to do stuff. And this idea caught on, and people were willing to jump forward and get involved. And we need to better understand, how do we make that happen? How do we get people seeing that this is practical, it's feasible, it's fun, brings people together? We can get some great grass-fed meat out of it. There's so many benefits, but that's really a question to you, is how can we develop the materials, the recruiting materials, to pull in our neighbors and convince them that this is practical, that this is doable and it's fun, and we can manage all the obstacles that come up.
I think Sarah has looked like she's even raising her hand to that, but just to point out, I did want to mention, I put in the chat my website, and the Community Grazing Cooperative page on that has a quick video, which kind of gives you a little description. And it also has the anthology, which is great. If you want to go in, you can read the anthology of all the people who do, not all of them, but a slew of community grazing cooperatives written from their own perspective, and the evolution and what that's done for themselves, the land, their experience. So it's not so much quantitative as it's very qualitative information. And hopefully behind that, we can bring the quantitative success of what this is how it's benefiting the communities as well. So Sarah, go ahead. How did your relationship with the land and the neighbors change?
I didn't really know my neighbors very well before the fire, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I knew a few of them, but I started to get to know people I didn't know well. And not only did I get to know them like, oh, hi, I'm seeing them driving the car, but actually we were dealing with real responsibility and challenges together. So all of a sudden you're getting to know people in a completely different way. And you're building, like I was building trust with people. And my kids were meeting older kids or other kids and other people and other adults and feeling a connection with them. So that was a huge thing. I feel like also we all started just to pay more attention to the land, because if you're trying to move animals, first of all, you're out there a lot, looking at the ground, looking at the animals. Are they getting enough food? Is my grass high enough, or is it low? Is it time to move them? And then, all of a sudden, all these observations start happening, right? And so there's just more time and observation that happens. And I would say another great benefit is, Sarah kind of taught me this when it's a lot of work to like go out and set up fences, but then you set up a whole new area, and there's like maybe high grass, or there's all these oak trees that are like full of leaves that need to be eaten, and you let the animals in, they come running in, they're so excited, right? And you sit there, like there's something about watching these animals eat. And if you just spend like 15 minutes watching them, it's really relaxing, right? So I was also talking about the fact that we've our communities had a lot of stress and trauma. And there's something about kind of touching animals and being with animals that can be for many people really therapeutic. And I noticed that was happening in our community as well. And not just for me, but for my kids and for the people who are involved in our cooperative. And sometimes for neighbors who would just come by and meet new baby lambs or new goat kids. So I would say those are things that came out of it.
Thank you. How about you, Carson? And how did things change for you with the land and the neighborhood?
Met some new neighbors, maybe some neighbors that weren't so adjacent to us, some neighbors down the street. We're able to meet some new folks, which is always nice. Building the community slowly, people are getting interested, people are asking questions, so it's kind of connecting the community as a whole. And then also just noticing what it does to the grasses, how it opens up the seed banks and how the density of grasses start to increase, and the different species, and trying to, it's cool seeing that change and being able to maybe take away some hardy grass and maybe introduce some native grasses. And it's cool to see that transition. Instead of just traditional mowing, you kind of have a little bit different, it's a different tool for trying to get those different species to pop out. And I think that was really surprising and cool to me to see that.
Yeah, it's interesting with grazing how quickly the transformation starts to happen, right? You get to really see it happen pretty quickly, which is fun with grazing. Maybe other things as well. Okay, William, on to you.
All right. Carson, I love hearing you talk about grass species. That just warms my heart. Well, so we had, in our first phase, we had 27 applicants, and we were able to fund 6 projects. In the second phase, we've had, I believe, 19 applicants, and the program is happening right now. We're going to see where our plan will probably be that we'll implement 8 projects. Or at least that's kind of how we've budgeted things. In our first phase, so I managed 2 projects, one with Yaka'ama, which is they're neighbors to the junior college to Schoen Farm. So there was kind of some synergy happening there, that Schoen Farm was doing some grazing for veg management on their parcel, and we just rolled it over the fence line to include a project at Yaka'ama. And then my other project was with the Arts and Ecology Center in Occidental, and then 2 of their neighbors, Two Sisters Place and then Mighty Arrow Ranch. So they're 2 neighbor parcels to the west of the Arts and Ecology Center. And I mean, I thought it was interesting, that project, because these are landowners that had established relationships, like going back years. They had good communication, they had trust. But the grazing itself was a new thing, right? So they didn't have those muscles built up yet. So it took some time to make that work. But that's the role that I play, right? Is to help in whatever way that I can to make that happen. And I think like now, they're like, those muscles are there, and we just need more funding to implement, or we need to support them to get their own livestock, and they like, maybe that'll happen. I don't know, but it was interesting. Like I said, that these were folks that had communication, they had trust, but it's still like, it didn't just happen. It took some time for it to,
Yeah, that's a great point, because everyone here who has been in different parts of establishing their grazing cooperative understand that it's a process, and there's a patience, and there's it's a relationship first driven work. Like the relationship has to come first, and no matter how well you've known each other, once you're sharing or collaborating on such an intimate thing as land tending with livestock, things are going to come up. So that process is good. You need help. You need help to just get you through the first couple of times, is what my experience is. And then people evolve. Yeah, I like the way you say flex the muscle, because then the collaboration just comes. And I talked to Brock a little bit about his grazing experience. And what I thought was so fascinating, after one time he started to talk about, he's like, yeah, next we want to talk about like where we'll start them depending upon when they get and how we move them with the seasons. And he was like, he already was changing his grazing approach. Instead of like, they went to this owner's property, then this owner's property, then this. He wanted to really develop a system with seasonality and when was the best time to graze. And so really quickly, you just start to observe, you see everything differently when you're sharing these animals and doing this tending. Okay, on to the next question. I think I'm going to just combine a couple of questions, and you guys can pick or choose whichever you'd like, or do both. What was your biggest surprise in the process? Like, what were you most surprised by, either when the animals came on or during the process? And what was your biggest challenge? Carson, I'm going to hand that to you first. You get to go first.
All right. I think one of my biggest surprises was how fast they eat the material. I think you always look at it, you give yourself a timeline, and you're like, man, they took that down way quicker. So always surprising, like their pace of consumption, which it's always fun. That's the good thing, is you want to knock that stuff down as soon as you can. But yeah, it's always surprising how fast they get it done. Obviously, one of our challenges, probably the same for everybody, is just trying to match time schedules and trying to get everybody to meet at the same time, and just everyone has their lives, and trying to mesh that together and having all those gears kind of fill in with themselves. And so it's probably the biggest challenge, is trying to combine everyone's schedules and lives together. And it can be tough, but I think it's the group aspect is still cool. I mean, it's really beneficial, but it's hard. The more people you have, the harder it is to have everyone gel together. So that's definitely a challenge. But
yeah. And do you find with that, because I know that's when people are coming together to kind of help tend or move or something, is that also a challenge with the growing of the grasses, because everybody kind of wants them at high growth season?
Definitely.
Like when do they go where? Because it's like everybody's like, oh, they ate all my stuff right now, because now the grass is not growing because it's so cold. But then once it starts going, so having a conversation around that, it's a constant conversation and relationship driven experience for sure. Thank you, Carson.
Yeah, so that's another aspect. The timing of the trying to get the stuff done is like so that's another challenge as well, is the timing of the seasons and the grasses and everything like that. Yeah, great, thank you. Andrew, you talked a little bit about it, but what was your biggest surprise and or challenge in the developing of your cooperative?
Definitely challenge is the case, because I view this as sort of a demonstration project to try to show to our neighbors around that this is practical and we can scale it once we get behind it. So my biggest challenge, I think, biggest obstacle, is recruiting people and really getting them motivated and identifying the people in there who are the movers and shakers, who's really going to be willing to make something happen, because that's not everybody. And that's the hardest thing in the work I've been trying to do to get the community going. That's the number one challenge. So we've got to figure out how to convince people that these benefits are at our fingertips if we get organized and move forward. And also, this is where, like what Goldrich has done, catalytic funding is critical, because people get motivated. I've seen that now enough times to know when people can see, wow, if we get our act together and get a plan together, then we can get some money in to get started, then we can roll. So that sequence, the help to get the plan together, and then having some catalytic funding to move things forward, those steps are really critical. So I'm hoping we can do a better job of marketing, pulling all this together so we can convince people and extend the project.
Sure. That's a great point. And I do find a lot of grazing cooperatives will start with 2 or 3 people, and then it evolves as people walk by and see what the sheep have done, or see how the land looks, or have kids and want to sheep but don't want them all the time. So it is a very experientially motivated development. So a lot of people, once they experience it, it evolves into, and sometimes you have people that decide not to be a part of it anymore, and then it's kind of its own fluid hub of movement. But that's a very good point, like talking people into it, yet being patient enough. And then experiential, you get people that on.
Yeah.
Okay, William, your turn.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Your biggest surprise about in the process, or the biggest challenge, or both?
Okay. I mean, my mind just started like thinking about how I think humans have this ancient relationship with livestock, right? We have to have had this relationship. I think it's just relearning that. I mean, challenge is funding. Thankfully, like I said, we do have this this opportunity through the Ag and Open Space District, but that came because of a disaster, right, from the 2017 fires. So we're trying to turn that into an opportunity. I think I think it was as well about the goals that the state has set for itself, as far as vegetation management using livestock. We have it's a huge lift. As far as just the number of livestock that are needed, the number of grazers that are needed. So it's a job building opportunity. It's at the RCD as well, just our own capacity to manage this grant is a challenge. I'm really fortunate to have a fellow through the AmeriCorps program. Angel is she's our Climate Corps fellow. So like we see that this program as well as an opportunity for early entry employment opportunities for people coming just fresh out of college. They can apply for this fellowship. It helps our capacity, and then the fellows are also learning and gaining an experience, and this is something that we need going forward, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So and I'm going to get to you, Sarah. Thank you so much, William. There's just a couple questions that kind of relate to this. One was systems and organizing grazing times, logistics. What I think is critical, and what I think everybody has said here is, I'm just summarizing because William also said this, is a critical piece is the human beings, and the humans beings being able to be a part of it, part of the facilitation, part of the coordination. So it's not something that you can just hand off to somebody, a bunch of docs or a contract, and walk away. Because we need to realize that the funding isn't just in the animals on the ground, but the human beings supporting each other and the relationship driven of the work. Because that's how this stays sustainable and people feel supported, is because the projects get started, they evolve, and there's continued and ongoing support, even amongst cooperatives. They can take care of each other. So we need funding to help get it started. And we need to remember that human piece and the coordination and the relationship driven work has to have humans involved, and we need to make sure that we try to find funding, yes, for young people to be trained and be a part of the development of this relationship driven work, relationship to each other, the land, and the animals, because that's really a sustainable way forward for us to live in this fire country and in this ever-changing planet. So on that note, Sarah, what was your biggest surprise and or challenge in the development or getting the animals? Any of the above?
I was surprised at in our community, the people that I found who were interested were really devoted And also the love of the animals was strong. Like it definitely kept us all going. Like, whereas sometimes when you have other projects you might be working on, like it's easy to let them slide. But with this, it's like, no, we got to move the animals. We have to figure this out. And I was surprised at how people were willing to show up, even when there were emergencies, things that we didn't expect. Everyone kind of showed up, which was amazing. And I think I'm really lucky in the people that I'm working with as well. Challenges are, I think, setting up fencing. Well, this actual setting up fencing can be challenging in that keeping it really hot, I found sometimes can be challenging. So keeping the energizer working correctly, or the electric fence from grounding out. And that's taken, I've learned a lot. Like every time I have a challenge, I call Premier One. I like know the guy to call. And now
A little mini ad for Premier One, because they are wonderful. If you need portable electric fencing,
they are wonderful.
Premier One is the company to use. They are in Iowa, so they're the only one that I know that's producing in this country. And they ship for free if it's over $100, and you can call and get customer service all the time. So great company to get equipment from, and their fencing are the best fences I've used.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to you, Sarah. So
the
fencing can
other
be
challenges
challenging.
we've had is some of our goats enjoy jumping over our electric fence when they're out of food, which that's been a challenge to try to figure out, like, okay, are they just telling us something and we should listen, or do we need to move them on and try to find a new home for them where they have hard fencing? We also had a sheep decide to run straight into a hard fence and broke its neck, which was a challenge. I know everyone who owns livestock, we lose them sometimes. But actually it was an opportunity, because we ended up eating that sheep and lamb, and it was delicious. So Carson, I'm interested now too, in maybe raising some lambs for food. So there's challenges, but often they turn into learning opportunities. I also saw somebody asked about kind of management systems, and I know like our cooperative, we try to meet, I would say every 6 weeks or so. And we've learned that like staying on top of the schedule is really important, because people do go on vacations and you want to try to make sure that you get coverage when you need it. And it can be complicated because you might be having babies that time of year. You might be gone, but maybe you're the only house that has food on it. So like figuring those systems out is important. And we do use Google Sheets in order to keep track of our finances. We keep a lot of shared records using Google Sheets. I know somebody asked that in the chat.
Yeah, that's good. And there's a whole, when I help people, we always start out with a whole list of agreements. We kind of have cooperative agreements, so it helps start the discussion and things like that. And you have a whole Google Drive with things, but yeah, the planning of moving the animals and the regular meetings, the regular conversation is really, really critical. And just keeping things going smoothly, and the willingness for it to be flexible. Yes, I was at Sarah's place moving the sheep when the sheep, first time I've ever seen that, ran headfirst and broke her neck. It was crazy.
I will also say one of the challenges, it seems like everybody, like whenever I needed to be somewhere urgently, that's when all the animals would maybe like get out. It's like all running around the property, that's rare now, but at the beginning, that was definitely a challenge when, but the great thing is I would call the other co-op members and be like, hey, you guys, I gotta go, but this is happening. Can somebody help? And it's always really nice to have other people involved who can help.
Thank you. I'm going to see if there's, so people have asked a lot about predators. Most, and people can speak to that, with Andrews, they have cows, and it's the rancher's cows. So, and they're going to be older, they're not bringing calves in, so there's not a whole lot of predation issues. With the other groups, they either have hard fencing, or the portable electric fencing works really well against coyotes. Mountain lions are definitely prevalent. When you move animals around a lot, you're less likely to have mountain lion attacks. Not that it won't happen, but the movement of the animals reduces that risk. And none of them have had dogs because a lot of these are rural residential neighborhoods and community members are not yet ready to have guard dogs. I have 4 guard dogs because I have lion issues and I love them, but they do bark at night and some communities aren't interested in listening to that. I have had people had great luck with llamas as well. Llamas are great if you're having just coyotes. They can't do anything against mountain lions. So predation's always a risk. Portable electric fencing kept hot, like Sarah talked about, is really critical. And when you move animals from place to place, when they're not in one place for a long period of time, you reduce your risk of predation because predators want to kind of watch and observe before they attack. Not that you get rid of it, but you're reducing it. Anything else anybody want to say on predator management, those who own animals? Carson, you guys haven't had any predator issues, I don't think.
No.
One of the
Okay.
biggest obstacles is getting funding for fences, particularly perimeter fences.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
you know, because if we can help offset some of that cost, that really makes a difference. I guess it's one thing if you're putting up temporary fencing, but then you've got a lot of maintenance to do and you got to be on it. So this is one of the biggest challenges. How do we?
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And that's why the RCD is great that they're actually doing some of that infrastructure funding, William, with the county RCDs, because there's nobody else that will fund infrastructure. And without infrastructure, your costs and maintenance and stuff means you're setting up fences every single time. You're doing that work every single time, which is costly and time consumptive.
Right.
And water infrastructure would be great as well. Okay, you guys, it's 3:45. I'm going to see if there's the only thing I really want to touch base on. If anybody is interested and wants to ask more questions or wants to ask, please feel free to email me, Sarah Kaiser. My website is Wild.Hollow. I'm always available for conversations. Everything that I've developed or any support I have is shared with everyone. Everything's open source. So this is, and the other cooperatives will support as well. I think we're being cut off. But so Sarah Kaiser at wild.hollow.com. If you want more information, even if you're already doing something or you just want to ask questions, I'm always available for support. That's what it's all about. This work is us connecting to each other and taking care of each other and the land and the animals that do the work for us. So thank you all very much. If any of the panelists want to say goodbye, I think we're out of time. Am I correct?
Thank
you
you
for
so
being
much.
here.
Yeah, thank you for being mindful of the time. And yeah, thank you for
Yes.
opening this space. It was amazing to hear all of you speak from all your different perspectives and your backgrounds and your experiences. And the chat was on fire. A lot of people were conversing, having great conversations. So I really, really appreciate all of our participants who have been actively participating and sharing knowledge with one another. But yeah, if the panelists have any closing words, by all means, take that time.
I have one more thing to say, and it's a plug for CAF. If you want to hear more about this, listen to the podcast that Amber did with me. It's a really informative podcast. She just put it in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yes, and Amber's been actively on the chat as well, sending y'all links.
And I told Amber, but she has a great podcast voice, so it's very pleasant to listen to. But you can learn a little bit more about their concept design, vision, those kind of things as well, if you want to listen to the CAF podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Oh, can Sarah say one more thing?
Other workshops.
Am I allowed to say one more thing?
Oh, yes, go for it.
Well, just that if you're thinking about starting something like this, I would say go for it. Like, I thought this was kind of a crazy idea and vision when I first started. And I'm also very grateful for Sarah Kaiser, who held our hand the whole way through. So it was so nice to have that support. But if you're somebody who is interested in doing this, like, reach out to your neighbors. Like, you might think it's kind of crazy, but you're going to be surprised. I was surprised at the response and at the interest that there was and the willingness to participate. So go for it. And if you need somebody to hold your hand, all of us, I'm sure, would be willing to talk to you more.
Awesome.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye.